Hello everyone, my name is Madeline Brown, and today I will be presenting my research project on the Maze Runner series by James Dashner. I've actually loved this series ever since I was a little kid, so it was actually really fun to be able to kind of pick apart the books and analyze it in this way for the project. For this presentation, I will be ultimately arguing that the Maze Runner book series demonstrates a futuristic dystopian society in which an unprecedented fatal illness caused mass extinction to spread across the globe, subsequently influencing high levels of fear and the rise of a corrupt government organization. These consequences were ultimately due to the story's exaggeration of pandemics and the implications of an authoritarian government. To begin, let's take a look at a quick summary of the series. The whole story begins with the main character Thomas, put in the middle of that picture, waking up in an underground elevator with absolutely no memory at all. In fact, he doesn't even remember his own name for a few days. The elevator rises quickly for a few moments and then comes to a sudden stop. The doors on the ceiling open, and Thomas finds himself surrounded by a few dozen boys that he doesn't know. Thomas learns later on that he is in a place called the Glade, which is a huge chunk of land that is surrounded by enormous stone walls, which lead into a maze, and that maze rearranges itself every night, making it extremely difficult to solve. None of the boys that Thomas meets have any memory from before they arrived at the Glade as well, so they all have to work together to sustain themselves within the walls. Eventually, as the story progresses, a girl named Teresa shows up in the Glade, and she has a note that says, "She's the last one ever." After this happens, the walls start malfunctioning, the Glade is becoming dangerous, so everybody in the Glade realizes that something's wrong and they need to get out as soon as possible. This strikes even more uncertainty and fear, so everybody wants to figure out how to escape. Thomas eventually takes on a leadership role and leads the group out until they find each other in a secret building attached to the outside of the maze. Everything is in shambles, there's blood everywhere, so the group thinks that whatever company or person or organization that put them in the maze is gone and defeated. A video left on the screen in that building they find explains that a deadly illness called the flare occurred from the sun and turns people into zombie-like creatures. They learn that the cure is only found within a serum that derives from the bodies of a very select group of young adults. So they realize that the maze was built to study their bodies and figure out how immune people vary from the non-immune. The group is rescued shortly after and is taken by a helicopter to quote-unquote safety. And then the first book ends. So, in this series, the exaggeration of a corrupt government and pandemics are explored. I'm going to talk about the government issue first. The Maze Runner was published in October of 2009, which means that the book was being written while Barack Obama was becoming the first African-American president of the United States. I'm not sure which political party that Dashner identified with, but it's pretty clear that the political discourse was extremely prevalent this year. As we know, there are a lot of rather racist people in the US, so Dashner definitely could have been exaggerating the potential event of an organization overthrowing the government and establishing its own authority over the people to throw Obama out, or the possibility that Obama was attempting to create his own government. And we know that when people overthrow the government, they tend to have a pretty strict idea of how they want things to be run. This is Ava Page, one of the leaders of Wicked, which is the name of the government in the book. Wicked took control pretty quickly after the flare became widespread and implemented their own rules and procedures into society. They were especially dangerous because the company truly believed that whatever they were doing was the right thing, so they were willing to do whatever it took in order to accomplish their goals. As the series continues, we learn that Wicked is opposed by pretty much all of the remaining groups who are left in the world. One of the groups in particular, called the Right Arm, believes that all of the wealth that Wicked is using to find a cure is being spent unjustly. And because of this, Wicked attempts to kill the right arm, every right arm member they come across, with hopes of defeating everyone who gets in their way. We also learn that Wicked does not allow any of the kids to leave the compound and threatens to kill them if they do. We also learn later on that Wicked is actually the company that created the flare. And as for pandemics, there actually was one that was occurring while the book was being written. The H1N1 flu had its first cases confirmed in the US in January of 2009 and was declared a pandemic in June of that same year. Before that, it had been causing an increasing amount of alarm in the previous months. The pandemic had been estimated to infect at least 700 million people worldwide and cause almost 300,000 deaths. The flare is clearly an exaggeration of the H1N1 pandemic. The sun flares, it was actually officially the year 2136 in the book, known as the solar flares and the solar storms, were an abnormal apocalyptic event in the book that occurred about 15 years before the events of the Maze Runner. Massive solar flares completely scorched the planet and turned most of the planet into wastelands known as a scorch. This event absolutely devastated human civilization and brought irreversible changes to Earth's climate and the environment. Since the flares destroyed Earth, Ava Page, that scientist, eventually became a really important part of Wicked. She created the flare so that about 70% of the population would be killed off in order to save resources. However, this went extremely wrong, and the flare turned into this zombie-like creature, and now Wicked had to find a cure. This is what influenced the maze trials and experiments on miners. The similarities between the H1N1 flu and the flare are pretty strong, to say the least. The flu was spread by coming into contact with other people who were infected, just like the flare was transmitted through people being scratched or bitten by those who had been infected. Those are known as cranks. The flu, H1N1 flu, was created by a mutation of a virus found in pigs, and the flare was created inorganically. Both illnesses can only be treated with a vaccine. The Maze Runner clearly had all of these aspects in common with the H1N1 flu, but James Dashner highly exaggerated all of these aspects. I don't think it would be safe to say that Dashner was really trying to predict the future in any way, but more so just use his book to convey what a world would look like that was heavily impacted by those two factors. And depending on which side of the political spectrum you fall on, you could have taken Obama's inauguration as a good or bad event. If bad, then you probably could have believed that he might have corrupted the government in some way. Or if good, then you were probably afraid that some anti-Obama racist group would have revolted against the government and overthrown it. Same thing with the H1N1 flu. Pandemics, as we all know, are rather scary events, so it was totally possible for people to have thought of the worst case scenarios. Even though I was only like 6 and 7 years old when all of these real-life events occurred, knowing what I know now, I don't think that either exaggeration could have come true. An organization like Wicked took over a huge portion of the world after it was already pretty much obliterated by the flare, so I don't think that a single president or the president's opposers with 2009's technology could have accomplished something like that easily. Furthermore, the H1N1 flu was manageable, much more so than COVID-19 actually. H1N1 was preventable by vaccines and treatments, which differs from COVID in the sense that vaccines only help the symptoms. They don't prevent anybody from catching the virus. All in all, there is a lot of evidence that suggests that Dashner's The Maze Runner extrapolated to specific real-life events. The H1N1 pandemic, and the potential for an authoritarian government overtake. The flare has countless similarities to the flu, and the political events of 2008 and 2009 are very similar to a less exaggerated Wicked. Thank you all for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment them in the discussion board below, and I will do my best to answer them fully and to chat with you guys about this. Thank you.